With that, we're really excited. We have a great program today. This morning was great. And of course, our next speaker is so happy to be following Jackie Raffi, right? So we have Bruce Powell. Dr. Powell is going to be talking to us about raising A-plus human beings. For the past 53 years, Bruce has dedicated himself to Jewish education. He's helped to found and lead 3 Jewish high schools and consulted on founding 23 more in North America, as well as over 60 Jewish day schools through his work as president of Jewish School Management. He's been honored with both the Covenant Foundation Award and the Milken Jewish Educator Award, and he serves as a distinguished lecturer of Jewish studies at the American Jewish University, where he was just named Interim Dean of American Jewish University's School for Jewish Education and Leadership starting July 1st. Congratulations, I think. Dr. Powell holds a PhD in education from USC. And Bruce, we're really excited and happy to have you. And you're going to be mentioning your book, right? Okay, here you go. Oh, you got some.
I was going to sing, but then I heard Jackie was going to be here, and I changed my whole talk. She used to be our cantor before y'all stole her. Oh well. So now I'll come here and listen. Anyway, thank you. Thanks, Joel, and thanks to Dr. Mark Moss for inviting me to come and do this today. It's it's a great deal of fun. I put all of my books out on a table out there. It's the honor system, and they're $20. I don't get any money from this. It's all going to go buy more books for kids in Jewish day schools. Tells you what to do out there. If you want to get it, get it. If not, they're all signed. If you want it more personalized, I'm more than happy to do that as well.
Swap this out.
Does that work good? Does that work well? Good. Ooh, I taught English. So just a little bit personal stuff. I have 3 children here at Valley Beth Shalom Day School. When I say I have 3 children, you know they're not my children. You all knew that, right? If you thought they were my children, thank you. You're my friend for life. You'll be in my will. All right, because if you think I'm that young, okay. So, I love this. I love this place. It's one of the great places. My kids come home. We have them. These 3 we have over every single Friday night for dinner. And this talk is about culture, creating a culture in your homes. Are most of you grandparents or certainly parents? And if you are parents and you don't like how your kids turned out and you messed up, then this lecture is no good for you. Okay, but it's because the last chapter of the book tells you how to be a parent, but that's too late, right? So now we're into being grandparents, hopefully. So how do we leave a legacy? How do we leave a legacy? Now I wrote on the board everything you need to know. You just need to remember one word out of this entire talk, and you've got the whole thing, and that's lives. Legacy, inspiration, values, experience, and supper. That's the most important one, by the way. We'll get to that. So every Friday night, these 3 children who go here come to our home for Shabbat dinner. So we can do that. We live close to our grandkids, but we live close, not all of them, but we live close to many of them. And 3 of them come to our home. And it's the way we build culture. And we do all kinds of shtick. You know what shtick is? This is a group that knows those kind of words? You know, one time I was teaching a group of rabbis, and I said, now, rabbinical students, back in 1990. And I was teaching them to trying to teach them how to be teachers, because not all rabbis know how to teach. And I said, teaching is all about creating memories. And I said, now you all remember where you were when President Kennedy was shot. Now this group can laugh because you all do remember where you were. Exactly where you were. And I looked at them and I said, so where were you? And one very nice woman raises her hand and says, Dr. Powell, we were not born yet. I go, but you're rabbis. And rabbis are always old. Anyway, I had to change whatever it was, and I didn't even know what they remembered because I was too old to remember what they remembered. Anyway, so on Friday night, we do shtick. And so, for example, one of our grandchildren has to start, he's 8, he has to start the Kiddush by saying, Vayhi Erev, Vayhi Voker, Yom, and the first one that says the next word gets Grandma's first piece of challah that she bakes every single Friday night, as did my mother and all of our daughters, our son, and so the first one says, Vayher, Vahivoker, Yom Ha Shishi. That was a test. Very good. You have a point, and you can tell your grandchildren you got a point. The points mean nothing. It's like that show, don't tell me. It means nothing. So, first one that says Hashishi wins. Now, it's silly shtick. But God help us if we forget to do it. And they'll remember that. They'll remember it forever. Then I get them focused. And then, of course, I have to prep the Torah portion that week because they know it better than I do because they go to Valley Beth Shalom Day School. And we have remember, they're 8 years old and one's 12. She's a girl. She's too cool for school. So I just focus on the twin boys. And I say to them, what's the Torah? And 10 minutes max of Torah discussion. What's the Torah portion about? What does it mean? What do we learn from it? And so on. So one Friday night, I said, so what are you learning about? They said, the story of Joseph. I said, okay, what's the story? And they tell me the story. And I said, so what's the moral of the story? What's the theme of this story? They looked at me and they called me Papa. They said, Papa, don't play favorites. The point of all of this is not to brag, well, it is to brag, but the point of all of this is to give you ideas, and we're going to have a discussion, you can ask questions, all the things that we can do as parents and grandparents to create culture, to create memory, all right? Because that culture is so powerful. It's so powerful, and grandparents can do things that parents cannot do. We just drove home from Foster City near San Francisco. My daughters, Mahatunim, live up there, and we went for Pesach. And we're driving back down, and the 14-year-old, 8th grader, says, I want to go in your car. He doesn't want to be with his brothers and his parents. So he gets into our car, and we're all driving to pretty much the same place. And we get to talk to him. And he says, now don't tell mom and dad, but I'll tell you, I'm interested in girls. I go, yay. And he says, and by the way, there were 2 incidents at school, not this one, a different Jewish school. And I didn't tell them about it, but I broke up 2 fights. This is an 8th grader who's 5'11", 170 pounds, 70-mile-an-hour fastball, okay? Left-handed. So for those who know about baseball, know that's good for 8th grade. And he breaks up anything that goes on, he just goes over and looks at them. They go, okay, we're done here. Because, boys at that age are generally small. They haven't hit their growth spurt yet. He hit his growth spurt in second grade. So, so that created culture for him. He'll remember driving home for 400 miles with his, he calls his grandmother Frama. Frama. You all have different names, maybe? I don't know. I'm Papa and Frama. Why Frama? Because the oldest grandchild could not say grandma and started saying Frama. So it became such a cultural icon that now in their day school, when my wife goes there to visit for some grandparents' day or whatever, their friends come up and call her Frama. Now, by 8th grade, they all know that it's really their grandmother, but it doesn't matter, all right? It's fun, and it creates interesting stuff. During COVID, you remember COVID? Terrible. Anyway, it was, thank God we're pretty much past it, I hope, God willing. So we couldn't see our grandkids, right? Everybody was worried about getting sick, and we were certainly worried about it because we were older. And so we did all this Zoom stuff. You all have a Zoom account now? You all know how to use it? No, you don't know how to use it. You still have a problem with it. Yeah, it's just, you get the one, it's $150 a year, and you have unlimited time and unlimited human beings on. It's great. It's not a big deal. So write it off your income tax, like it's a business expense. Just raising grandchildren is a business. Okay, so we used to have these Zoom calls, and they were interested in learning about the history of their great grandparents. My parents. All right, my dad was a Marine in a place called Guadalcanal. Some of you may know about that one. And his other grandfather, great-grandfather, was also an Army doctor at a place called Guadalcanal. They didn't know each other, thank God. One was in the MASH tent, remember, the medical tent, and my father, thank God, did not get injured. So I did a whole like a slideshow for them online about their great-grandparents. And we started out not with World War II, that's just a bit too much. We started out, of course, with cars. What cars they were driving at that time. So I had to go online and get photographs of a 1948 stick-shift Chevy. All right, that's about as far back as I can remember in terms of my father driving a car. All right, and then the what was it, a 53 Chevy station wagon that they brought my brother home in when he was born, and so on and so forth. And they loved that. Now they know something about their family history. This is the legacy part of Lives. It's living, it's alive. They want to know about you. They're interested in you, all right? And you can do stuff with them that, again, their parents can't do. Inspiration. By the way, the word inspiration comes from the Torah. Everything comes from the Torah. Of course, we're at Valley Beth Shalom. All right, everything comes from the Torah. How do we know this? Because when God created human beings, Adam, what was Adam? What was he before he was alive? What was he? Dirt. Thank you. A lump of clay. All right, there's even a song about that back in the 60s or something. I took a lump of clay. And anyway, and God comes along and literally breathes life into this lump of clay. And the word for that breath is nishima, and out comes nishama. All right, breath in, nishama is, what is it? Soul. You breathe in, you literally can breathe into your grandchildren, children, or special others. Maybe you have special nieces and nephews or friends, and you literally can inspire them. Literally breathe into them that inspiration, those things that are interesting and can really help them navigate life. And what will inspire children, right? It depends on the age, of course, right? There's all kinds of ways of inspiring, of breathing into. And I leave that to you to think about that and what you can do with that. Values. What do we value? How many of us sit down and talk with our grandkids or have spoken with our children about what we value, really value? Now, adults, typically what you value is what we spend our time on and what we spend our money on. Generally speaking, is what we value. All right? I value, so if you look at do you remember the check register? Remember you used to have to write, how much you spent? Yeah, I used to write it down. Yeah, okay. So I love talking to people that know what I'm talking about. So if you looked at the check register for Debbie and Bruce Powell and take out food, clothing, and shelter, normal things, and transportation, and you'll see what's left is what we value. What we spend that extra money on is what we value. And so what you'll find there is simply we value Jewish education and weddings. Because that's what we spent all our money on. It took, any realtors here? Anybody in the real estate business? No. What's that? In the past, that's not now, but in the past, yeah, of course. So you'll understand it took me 38 years to pay off a 30-year mortgage because I didn't really value house. I valued using the money that house appreciated and using it for Jewish day school education and weddings. And that was where all the money went. Thank God for Social Security. Okay, then I could retire. Well, we'll talk about retire in a minute. But do we talk to our kids about what we value? Have you ever sat down and said, we value tzedakah, we value charity, we value different kinds of, we value Jewish education, we value education, we value professions, we value all kinds of things. And so I'll give you one more example, and then I'm gonna take your question. We decided that tzedakah was a very, very important value in our house. So every Christmas day, do you get those envelopes asking you for money? You still get them in the mail? You get like dozens, scores, maybe 100 or two. I get them like, I don't tell them not to send it to me because I love getting mail, right? That's the only mail I get, that and bills. So I don't even get bills anymore because everything's online. So I used to keep them all. I throw them into a box. And then on Christmas Day, we would sit down and I would say to our kids, okay, we have 4 children. And I would say to them, okay, you have $1,000 to give away. And for them, that was a lot of money. It was a lot of money for us too. And you've got to pick from these envelopes, from these different solicitations, how much money you want to give to each one. Now you only have $1,000. And so and you could give $10, you can give $5, you can give $18, you can give $100 of it. That would be 10% of the whole amount, of course. And they have to do the percentages. That was also part of the education. And they would decide what we would give to, and then we would write the checks. Right? That's an experience that they never forgot. And guess what? They're all adult children today, and they're all giving tzedakah because we've built a culture and a legacy of giving. All right, for those, for example, who might have a fund at the Jewish Community Foundation, there's a woman there named Naomi Strongen, who I happen to know very well, who is the vice president of Designed Philanthropy. If you have a fund there, or if you don't have a fund, I highly recommend that you do, called a DAF, a Donor Advised Fund. And if you have enough money in it, then Naomi will sit down with you and talk to you and your families about how to give and where to give, and all based on what you value. She's not there to advocate for any particular thing. She's there to simply get the family to talk about their values. It's a beautiful thing to do. If you're doing it already, God bless you. Yasher koach. All right, if you're not doing it yet, now's the time to start. It's a great thing. So values, what do we value? And there's going to be all kinds of values. Experience. Who has more life experience than we? Right? You've got life experience that our children don't know certain things. All right? And certainly our grandchildren don't know. When something comes up, how do you handle it? And it could be practical stuff like buying a home or investing. It could be it could just be about interpersonal relationships, all right, how to handle difficult situations with friends or relatives. It could be, my wife just spent 2 hours on the phone with our daughter-in-law in Washington, D.C., and my son, and our son, talking to her about what to make for 15 people that she was hosting in her home for Pesach. Because Debbie, my wife's name, Debbie has the experience of how to handle that many people and handle them with great sensitivity, because you think it's not just feeding people. Because remember, we're Jews, and everybody has different eating problems. And you never want to push your family away because they don't eat what we're serving. That's so upsetting to people, and they feel pushed away. I'm going to teach you 2 words that are different. You know these words. All right, one is accommodate. You know this word? Accommodate means, if I accommodate Gloria, that means Gloria is the other. She's the other. The opposite of that is embrace. If I embrace Gloria, then I'm going to make sure she's part of my family. I'm going to tell you quickly the parable of the 4 pots. We have 4 different eating needs in our family. So on Pesach, when we would do it for 30, 40, or 50 people in our home, well, really wasn't in our home, it was in the tent in the backyard. The 4 pots were the 4 pots of soup. You know, the chicken soup you have to have, so something like, I don't know why you have to have that, but you do. And so we had the chicken soup with matzo balls. We had the chicken soup without matzo balls, for those people who are on a diet, which is everybody. Then we had the vegetarian chicken soup, which is an oxymoron, of course. And then we had the chicken soup for people with celiac disease. Now, when the soup came out, and Gloria was at my table, and she needed the vegetarian soup, it all looked the same. You couldn't tell the difference, really. I mean, one had a matzo ball and one didn't. But otherwise, you really couldn't tell the difference. That's embrace. The 4 pots of soup. That's embrace. You push no one away based on food. I can tell you that in my mother's house, right, this is not good, but if you didn't eat what was on the table, it was just too bad for you. You know, You have food on the table, you eat it. Now, that was then, that was back in the 40s and 50s, and this is now, and there are different kinds of things, and why not? And besides which, your children are one thing, but your grandchildren, whatever they want. If they want chocolate sauce on their chicken on Friday night, give it to them. Who cares? They can eat anything because they're little, and they can, or maybe some of them are big. Some of your grandchildren, maybe even in their 20s, even 30s, they can still eat whatever. All right. Some of us can't do that anymore. Right. So, experience. We know stuff that people don't know. And the last piece of lives is supper. Now, what do I mean by that? Now, when I'm talking about parents, you'll see it in the book. It's for the parents, it's PAVES, parental actions, values, expectations, and supper. You'll see that in chapter 5 of the book. But for us, supper means taking our grandkids out, again, and it doesn't have to be just grandkids, because not everybody has grandkids. It could be, younger people, it doesn't matter who it is, or older people, taking them out for a meal. There's nothing, I think it was Ben Franklin who said, there's nothing that facilitates conversations more than a meal, having a conversation over a meal. I mean, I can tell you, as somebody who has raised millions of dollars for Jewish day schools in this city, all right, all of those gifts were done over lunch. Always over lunch. You can't ask someone for $1 million, on the phone, with a letter, even sitting in my office at the school, nah, not happening. It's going to be over lunch, for sure. So supper, and think about that with our grandkids. And do we take them out for pancake breakfast? If we can. Or do we show up at all of their games, which seem to be endless in my family, and have a special snack afterwards for them? Take them out for yogurt or Menchie's, whatever that is. I don't like yogurt. I like ice cream, right? And by the way, they're very particular about which yogurt or ice cream they want. By the way, they like Breyers, or they want. When we go to Santa Barbara, what ice cream are they going to get? What are they getting? McConnell's, right? Yeah, they already know all that, right? But we're creating a culture, and they're going to remember those things. They're going to remember that challah that we baked. They're going to remember the shtick we do on Friday night. They're going to remember the values that we talk to them about, the important stuff. Some of it stuff is just motivational. The shtick is motivational, but the values are substantive. One last suggestion, then we're going to open it for questions or comments. How many of you, is there anyone here who's written a memoir? Yes? About your life, just for your children. Anyone sat down and tried to do that yet? Got one? All right. If you haven't, I highly recommend it. My mom and dad did one for us. And the reason why I started to do one, this was back, I think she died, she passed at 93 in 2012, I think. And the kids were sitting around, and we were looking at, for Shiva, and we were looking at picture books, albums, black and white pictures of great grandma B. All right, and she went to like Camp Hydrology in New York. Do you know what that is? Her mother, my grandmother, was an early adopter of all health foods kinds of things, and water. Hydrology, water was the key to everything, and Camp Hydrology taught you how to drink lots and lots of water. It was a summer camp, sleepover. I think you got, vegetables and water, you know, and you got something else and water with every single meal, lots of water. And you're supposed to come back very, very healthy. It may have worked, who knows? And certainly water is important. So we were looking at all these things, and we were talking, and I was telling them about some trips I took, and we said, we didn't know you did that. I said, what do you mean you didn't know I spent 6 weeks in Italy with one of the most famous artists in the world? Well, how come you didn't know that? Well, Daddy, you never told us. And I realized that my mother wrote this memoir, and I was going to have to do it too. So I sat down in 2012, and I started to write. And the first thing I did in the writing of it is I wrote a little ethical will. I basically told them why I was writing this. All right, it was just for the family. And I listed all of the angels in my life. If you don't believe in angels, I can tell you that there are angels. There are people who tell you things to do and push you in a little direction called Etzba Hashem, or Etzba Elohim, the finger of God. Pushes you a little bit this way, a little bit this way, and you end up, typically, if you listen to the right angels, doing good things. So I listed every angel I could think of who guided me on a path, from my teacher in 5th grade and 6th grade, to obviously my parents, my older sister, my younger brother, to lots of friends, to Shirley Kazarian, nice Armenian, Eastern Orthodox Catholic woman who told me I had to go apply for a job at Yeshiva University of Los Angeles High School, where I founded my first school. All right, I was not Orthodox, I am not Orthodox, but I worked with a rabbi there, and we founded what today is Eula High School in Los Angeles together. And she told me I had to apply for this job. I was 31 years old. But I finished my doctorate, and she told me, Shirley was one of my angels. And you have to recognize who those angels are. And that was the first part. And then I just started. I was born, Cedars-Sinai Hospital. According to legend, my parents drove in 15 minutes from Pasadena, right, to get to Cedars, not where it is now, of course, but the old one on Fountain in Vermont, right, where it was Cedars of Lebanon Hospital, not Cedars-Sinai, right? And I just started to write everything that happened, all the things of interest, going to camp and going to whatever I can remember, 2nd grade, 1st grade, whatever I can remember, and just went right through it. And then there were some fun things. And of course, one of my daughters, my second daughter, who's a complete voyeur, wants to know everything. She says, I didn't know you took Linda to the prom. Linda's a friend of ours. And she was very excited about that, right? So, because she wanted to even know more. And I said, no more. So, and nothing happened, don't worry. So, and we're still friends. So it's fun. It's fun for them. They want to know about you. Write the memoir. You'll be creating a legacy. You'll teach them about values. It'll be inspiring for them. It'll be inspiring. It'll talk about all of your experience, and they may learn something from that. And you design it and you organize it any way you want. Mine's up to 180 pages now. I keep adding to it because we're up to, first grandchild, second grandchild, and so on and so on. And what that meant to us in our lives. And it could have lots of meaning and so on. So I'm going to stop here, and I'm going to open it for any comments, questions. I have a few more things to say, but I want to give you all a chance. Okay, go ahead.
While you were speaking about values, and perhaps right now you did answer the question I have, how do you engage adult children and adult grandchildren whose response is, well, those were your values, it's a different time, et cetera, and they kind of, how do you prevent those two generations from shutting us down? Memoir is great, but that takes a long time, and that is for the future, but how do you deal with the immediate?
It's a very difficult question. I'm not going to tell you, oh, that's easy. It's a very, very difficult question. First of all, don't give up. One of the things, there are 6 questions, according to the Talmud, that God asks of us when we pass from this world. Were you honest in business? Did you make a set time to study? Did you raise up community, children? Did you have hope? Did you act with wisdom? And did you understand a big thing from a small thing? Those are the 6 questions. Hope. Question, I think it's number 3 or 4. Did you have hope? Never give up. Keep making supper. Keep making those lunch dates. Never alienate ourselves from our children, no matter what. Nothing is worth that. That's number 6. Did you understand a big thing from a small thing? Right? There are very, very few big things. Most of the things we get upset about are small things. Right? I'm trying to get to the airport to catch that flight, and then we're in Los Angeles, so you know what the traffic is like. And I'm going to be late. I'm going to be late, and there was an accident. What was the big thing? Me missing the flight, or the person should be healed who was in the accident? So you say the prayer, El na rafana la. God, please heal her for him. All right, big thing, small thing. So never alienate, always have hope, keep working at it. And look, there's also things that we used to do back in the day, and I don't know if it's still possible now, but if you have grandchildren of a certain age, make sure they go to a place called BCI. Anybody go to BCI here? The Brandeis Collegiate Institute, right here in Simi Valley. It's pretty much free. I think it's $400 for a month in residence. Everything paid for, and it's for people basically 20 to 30. All right, so if you have children or grandchildren in that age group, get them to go to BCI, pay for it, whatever it is, and just convince them that you'll never regret it. You'll never regret it. You know, that type of thing, getting them involved in some sort of Jewish life, meaningful life, which is really what this is all about.
Very practical question that building on this lady's question. How do you take away the grandchildren's and the children's phones at the table?
I'm sorry, didn't.
How do you take away their
phones?
phones? How do you make them shut their phones?
You don't take away their phones. Okay, what you have to do is get the. You were talking about grandchildren or children? We make limitations. All right. In other words, to take them away is useless. It's never going to happen. All right, because it's like, I don't know. That would be taking away a car from me when I got a car. You know, you can't take it away because that's just at the table, right? So there are ways of doing it. You know, everybody throw their cell phone in a basket. You know, our son works in a skiff. You know what a skiff is? He works for the in the State Department in Washington D.C. And a skiff is a place where you can't have a cell phone because it's completely secure. All right, so they can't let any signals out. So, you know, pretend you have a skiff and tell everyone to throw their phone in a basket. And so we can talk to each other. But then you have to have, Leah, we have to have good stuff to talk about. And remember, it's generally, depending on the age, it's not what we want to talk about. It's what they want to talk about. So we have to, the key to education, the key to any relationship is to get inside the head of the other. Right? My wife is a master at this. Debbie is a master at this. All right? I want to talk about politics, not here, God ever. But I want to talk about literature. I want to talk about, you know, music from the 60s, 50s, 60s, whatever. They don't. You know, depending on who they are, they either want to talk about current sports. So now I have to go back to reading the entire sports section of the Los Angeles Times every day just to keep up, all right? And then I call my son to give me a little extra color on that. And Vin Scully is no longer with us because I used to count on him when I watch baseball. And they want to talk about Pokemon, and they want to talk about anime, TikTok. I have no idea what those things are. But I have Minecraft, so I have to find out. So I did it once. I sat with the 8-year-olds, and I said, tell me about Pokemon. He pulls out a 900-page book of every single Pokemon character. Do you know what I'm talking about? I hope so. If you don't, go get the book. Don't. And he went through every page for 2 hours, an 8-year-old, focused on every character telling me what everyone was, and I was extremely interested. I'm still not interested, but because he's interested, I'm interested. We used to go on Pokemon walks. Pictures, cards, right. I exchanged baseball cards. Remember baseball cards? Yeah. And so we have to live with that phone, and then we can also use it as a tool. So I used to run a high school. So I would teach a class. It was called the Israeli-Palestinian conflict class. Talk about dangerous class to teach these days. It was before things got so toxic. And I insisted that they bring their phones to class and their computers. Why? Because when we had a question, I said, look it up. I used it so that they would realize that this could be a tool for something, not just entertainment, but for education as well. Okay, sir.
First of all, I bought your book. Okay.
Thank you.
My very best endorsement so far.
Thank you.
I've got a question about our values as a community. Okay. Jewish day school is really expensive.
Yes.
I'm curious if you know of the population of non-Orthodox Jewish families in the county of Los Angeles, how many can afford tuition for, say, 2 kids for 8 years?
All right. I don't know. That's a great question. I can't see your name. Brian. Brian, I almost could read it. Brian, this is the biggest challenge we have in the Jewish day school world. All right, but I don't have the demographic of how many can afford it, but I do have a different demographic. And that is every single Jewish day school in this city, every single one gives an enormous amount of tuition assistance or financial aid, however they call it. Every one. People are embarrassed. They're embarrassed to ask for it because I'm making a living. What's the matter with me? You have to ask for financial aid. It hurts your dignity. I get that completely, right? But you can ask for it. I can tell you that of the kids at Toledo High School, this I can tell you for a fact, 50% are on some kind of tuition assistance. So it is possible to go if it's a value, and that's a value proposition. It's also a money proposition. If you don't have the money at all, still ask. Who knows? You might get a full scholarship. All right, and if you can't do day school for whatever reason, then do camp. All right, go to a Jewish overnight summer camp. Go to your afternoon religious school. Take your kids to shul every Shabbos morning. And frankly, the cheapest thing you can do for Jewish education is have them over to your house every Friday night and bake a challah. It doesn't cost any money. And if they're not here, do it online. All right? There's so many ways we can do this that doesn't cost money. Look, as I said, Debbie and I made a choice way back when, that Jewish education, day school education, was of value to us, and camp. One cute story, when my daughter, our oldest daughter, was 13, I said, Daddy, I said to her, Rachel, would you ever consider marrying a non-Jewish man? She says, Daddy, I don't understand the question. I go to a Jewish day school, I go to a Jewish summer camp, we go to Israel, we keep Shabbat. Where would I meet one? She was 13. It's very difficult, and it was very expensive, and we didn't care about owning our house, right? We made a choice. We made a choice, right? It was a difficult choice, and I was an educator. Difficult choice. And if we didn't make that, and if we could not afford those things, then we'd have Shabbos dinner together. We would go on trips together. We would do Jewish things. We had a Havarah. Our Havarah there was 6 couples and ended up being 22 children. And we had services in Laguna Beach on a outing on a weekend, right? We just did as many Jewish things as we could do that didn't cost any money. Yes.
And I did not get in here to hear you, unfortunately, but I do know about you and about the school. And I just want you to know that the comments from people walking out have been that you are one of the most interesting speakers that we have ever heard.
Oh, thank you. Can you do me can anybody record that for my wife?
You are a very hard act to follow, and you're brilliant, and thank you so much. We have 2 kids, and I have to tell you, our kids are doing such a great job with the grandchildren. We're just so pleased with it. The Judaism is a little bit more challenging. One of our daughter lives in Maryland, and our son lives in Northern California. They're just great. Our in-laws are great and whatnot. The only thing I've been able to really do in terms of kind of indoctrinating them is I've taught them 2 acronyms, and you kind of touched on this in the beginning. One is MOT, the other one is, WOT and WOM, waste of time and waste of money. And we've talked about that. And now their parents are beginning to do that, which is really hilarious. So I don't know if that's going to mean what kind of games they're going to buy.
Absolutely.
But you mentioned that at the beginning, and honestly, they're talking about that. And we had an experience with our granddaughter. She was in a bookstore. And you know how the bookstores are? They have books, but they also have stuff that they're selling on both sides of the aisles.
Toys.
They're twins. These are 11-year-old twins, girl and boy. They're just starting to get ready for their bat mitzvahs and whatnot. Anyway, so Mila, I'm walking around the bookstore, and Mila is at the end of one of the aisles. Now, these kids all read a lot. But I'm walking around, and I'm just walking around, and I thought, this is really interesting, because she's playing with something that's useless. It's a waste of time, and it's a waste of money. But let's see what happens when she knows I'm in her aura. So I'm walking around, and she looks at me, and she says, and she doesn't look guilty, Safta, is this a waste of time? Oh my God, I was so excited. And I said, Mila, that's up for you to decide. Beautiful. You know, yeah. So when you delegate, you cross your fingers. But the story's not told. You are doing an amazing job. We're not doing as good a job with Judaism, but I just wanted to share with you that you're an inspiration. So thank you so much.
And what you did there, Barb, is you created a culture for them. You created something that they will never forget. I'm going to say one more thing to Brian. Brian, one of the things that because a lot of you're right. I would say that 80% of the people cannot afford. I agree with you. It's a problem for me that is so painful. I can't begin to tell you how painful it is. Right? I think about it every day, and I talk to every school about something called endowment. Right? If all of our schools each had $100 million, then everybody could go for free in endowment. But one of the things that we can do that is not expensive is to educate ourselves in learning, in Jewish learning, for example, and so then we can pass that knowledge on, whether it's over Zoom or it's over a meal, to our children, our grandchildren, right? And that my guess is that here at Valley Beth Shalom, you can get that kind of education.
Thank you.
Almost for free.
Sorry. Thank you so much. It's very enlightening and interesting. Thank you. I wrote a memoir, but I interviewed my parents over 17 years. They lived in Israel. I lived in South Africa at the time. And every time I went back to Israel, I interviewed them and recorded everything they had to say, because I knew that it would all be gone after they were gone. And I tell everyone to write down their story, because it will be too late later. Get it from your parents, get it from family, cousins, anyone who can tell you stuff, and photographs, a lot of photographs. And you know, most of us don't write on the photograph who this is and when it was taken. Then you find all these photos and you don't know what to do with them. So yeah.
That's a great suggestion.
Yeah.
If you haven't already, label every single one of those old photographs on the back. Put the year, put who's in it, and whatever, because kids love that stuff, all right? They love that stuff.
There is an excellent resource for preschool and elementary school children, which is free, and it's PJ Library, which is run through Jewish Federation, I believe, and also as a member of BJE, which is Builders of Jewish Education. They too funnel funds for scholarships to the various schools, and they also have things like March of the Living, which there is a cost, but there is a scholarship situation available too. So those are resources.
Yeah, I want to, just a big plug for PJ Library. If you have little kids, I mean, it's for kids under 6, 7, really, it's for younger kids, for pishers. And the greatest books, they just keep sending you books. It's all free, and all you have to do is sign up for it. Right, PJ Library. It's funded by a big foundation in Connecticut.
Any other questions, comments? Yep, Mark, just a second.
Okay, so
This will be the last one.
Yeah, one last one, and then I'm going to tell you. Okay?
You have a book that's outside for people to see, A+ Children. Can you tell us very quickly, in a few words, how to raise A+ children?
Oh yeah, it's easy. My guess is most of you already have. All right, and that's my very strong feeling. You're all here today. All right, you're all participating here. That already tells me a lot of everything I need to know. But you know, number one, I think honestly, show up. You know, what was it, Woody Allen? That 90% of life is just showing up. Show up to, you know, and have them show up to your homes, and show up to their homes, and show up to their games, and show up to their performances. You know how many times I've seen Annie? Okay. Now I'm doing it again. You know, for the grandchildren. Show up to everything. And as I said to Brian, do a lot of learning yourself. Okay, do a lot of learning yourself, so you have a Jewish learning, so you can pass that on. Many of us have professions and educations, all right? We need to say, okay, what have we done in our professions that we can give over that wisdom to our children, to our grandchildren? Wisdom is a rare commodity today, right? We need a great deal of wisdom. One of the things I like to tell people is that you know, in America, knowledge is power, right? We've even heard, you hear that expression, knowledge is power. But in Judaism, knowledge is not only power, knowledge also is for wisdom. So in terms of raising our children and raising our grandchildren, or being part of that raising, it's what is that wisdom that we can give over to them? What is that's a special kind of power that all comes from the values piece of lives. It all comes from the values. What do we value? What do we care about? What can we tell them what we care about? And what can we tell them that is really important in the world? What is really important? All right, and that's not an easy question, and I don't have the big answers for this, right? For Debbie and me, what was really important was baking challah. I'm not kidding. Mother started in 1960. She did it until she pretty much went into the Jewish home and couldn't do it anymore, but left 4 in the freezer just in case we didn't. But what do we value? And the challah became the basis, the aroma, the feel, the taste. All of those sensory things became the glue of our Jewish lives. Okay, what did we value? What did we value? And I think in raising our children and our grandchildren, really getting them to have an understanding of what is valuable, all right? What truly is valuable. Big thing from the small thing.
Family is probably the most valuable thing. And I think that with your grandkids, you want to keep them within that family, as you're saying, Dr. Powell. And it's wonderful to hear you speak. I have 4 grandkids, and the 2 are here and 2 in San Francisco and college bound and little ones. And my little ones who do come a lot, one thing I started doing with my grandson, I've always picked them up from school whenever I could, either one of them, but I started playing games and saying, what do you want to do? This was pre-phones, but we did, like, you want to play hide and seek? This is what grandma did when she was young, and they absolutely, to this day, run in my house, 14, 11. Can we play hide and seek? That is like a beginning of something, and then I relate back with where they can have whatever phones. I tell them when they come over, you can do anything you want here with phones, whatever. But there's a time when I try and be part of that with them. Oh, what are you doing on your I get my pad out. What are you doing? Can you teach me that? How can I play that game with you? Kind of relate back. My elder grandkids, I actually spent, they're 22 and 19 in college, but one is down here right now at college. But I will say that my relationship is more emailing, definitely being part of what is happening today, because they're not going to come to me. I have to go to them.
That's right.
And that's the most important thing. What are you doing in art? You love art? I show them my art. It's just, it's a relationship that you got to build.
Angela, you're showing up. You're showing up. And you're putting in part of your neshama, your soul, and you're breathing that neshima into them, and they will come out with that piece of your soul and legacy as well. Thank you all so much.
Bruce, thank you very much. Very, very personal and inspirational. Thank you very much. Okay, we have our Passover lunch, which is in Glazer Hall.